Welcome to the Sell My Business podcast. I'm your host, Jeffrey Feldberg. This podcast is brought to you by Deep Wealth and the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience. Your liquidity event is the largest and most important financial transaction of your life. But unfortunately, up to 90% of liquidity events fail. Think about all that time, money, and effort wasted. Of the quote-unquote successful liquidity events, most business owners leave anywhere from 50% to over 100% of their deal value in the buyer's pocket and don't even know it. I should know. I said no to a 7-figure offer and yes to mastering the art and science of a liquidity event. 2 years later, I said yes to a different buyer with a 9-figure offer. Are you thinking about an exit or liquidity event? If you believe that you either don't have the time or you'll prepare closer to your liquidity event, think again. Don't become a statistic and make the fatal mistake of believing that the skills that built your business are the same ones for your liquidity event. After all, how can you master something you've never done before? Let the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience and our 9-step roadmap of preparation help you capture the maximum value for your liquidity event. At the end of this episode, take a moment to hear from business owners just like you who went through the Deep Wealth Experience. Jayson Lowe is the founder of Ascendant Financial, Inc., a highly regarded coach, speaker, and advisor to individuals and business owners nationwide. Jayson leads a team of professionals highly sought after for their expertise and commitment to the process of becoming your own banker, developed by the late R. Nelson Nash. This is evident in all areas of Ascendant Financial and its successful process, which works to help people achieve financial prosperity in both their personal and business lives. Jayson also works closely with accountants, lawyers, and strategic partners to provide unique and unrivaled solutions that maximize clients' wealth. He is recognized as one of Canada's top overall advisors, author of several publications, and co-author of The Banker's Secret, a simple guide to creating personal wealth for Canadians. Jayson has delivered hundreds of presentations to the general public, appeared on countless stages and interviews. He is internationally recognized as one of the leading educators and implementers of becoming your own banker, the infinite banking concept. Welcome to the Sell My Business podcast, and I am so excited. We are going to have a terrific episode for you today because of our guest. When it comes to liquidity events, I always like to say it's not how much you actually get, it's how much you keep. And hindsight is always 20/20. But what if you could look forward so you can look back and do things right today? And that's what we're going to be focusing all about. But let me not get ahead of myself. Jayson, welcome to the Sell My Business podcast. We are so delighted to have you with us. Jayson, let's kick things off with the story behind the story. What got you to where you are today?
Oh my goodness. Firstly, thank you for having me, Jeffrey. It's great to be with you and with your listeners. Where things began for me, I'll take you back. I'm going to age myself a little bit back to, oh my goodness, growing up with parents who in the early 1980s, what I know now, inflation skyrocketed and my parents argued about money. I remember that as a toddler and it wasn't a real pleasant experience. I had nobody in my life to mentor me, to teach me how to not only keep the right amount of money, but what to do with it in order to multiply it and grow it. And in my early 20s, my father passed away suddenly and unexpectedly. And I had learned some really important lessons about really appreciating the value of a dollar. And I was born and raised in a small mining and forestry community. Your listeners may be familiar with Shania Twain, country music sensation. Her real name's Eileen. She was born and raised in the same community of Timmins, Ontario, up in Canada as I was. And when I began my journey into being an entrepreneur, I reflected on knowing a lot about what not to do as it related to the use of money and really focused on surrounding myself with mentors, people who were already achieving the level of success that I had aspired to. And several life challenges got thrown at me all at once, with my father passing away prematurely, my mom passing away a few years later, also prematurely, suddenly and unexpectedly, my first marriage ending, being in deep financial trouble as a result of that. And I'll never forget it. I was standing in the home that my first wife and I purchased, and it was empty. And I was staring out at this sold sign on the front lawn, and I was feeling devastated, and I didn't know who to turn to. What would you have done if you were in that situation? But I decided in that moment that I was going to take control and I was going to get things back on track. And fast forward to today, I'm remarried. I have 4 beautiful children. My wife, Rebecca, who is absolutely amazing, my life partner. And we don't worry about anything financially anymore. And you've heard this before. You talk to so many people who are in business where if they achieve a level of success, people say, "Oh gosh, aren't you lucky?" They have no earthly idea that it's a culmination of years of 16 plus hour days, sacrificing more family time than one can imagine, and just being committed to succeeding, that you're willing to sacrifice everything to do that. There's a lot more to that story, but I think for the benefit of your listeners, it's just really, for me, thinking of what my dad used to tell me, God rest his soul. He used to say to me, "Son, don't ever be found guilty of giving up on yourself." And that was really, and continues to be, a big motivator for me.
Wow, Jayson, that's really a heartfelt story. And thank you for being so open and vulnerable for our community and sharing really the backstory of what you went through. And I suppose there's always 2 sides to every coin. And on the one hand, just a real set of unfortunate circumstances, challenging circumstances that really pushed you to the limit. And for some people, it would have gone in a different direction. You channeled that and it made you a better person. As hard and as difficult as that was, you made the best of that. And I really commend you, and my heart goes out to you for being able to do that.
Thank you.
And so, you are walking the talk and talking the talk and all of those things. This is not theory from the classroom that we're going to be talking about today. This is from the trenches. And, for our listeners, Jayson is a thought leader, a successful author, and he's just out there changing lives. So, Jayson, why don't we start more on the negative side? You and I are both guys that the glass is always half full, but let's look at it from the flip side. Where do most business owners get it wrong when it comes to their financial future and their money?
Oh gosh, business owners have been there, done that, got the t-shirt as it relates to advice, in particular financial advice, and they just don't take action. And so there's no shortage of advice when I talk to successful business owners, but there's a shortfall, and in some cases, a complete absence of action, because the business owner is constantly being busy in their business. But if I can just express to your listeners, business owners make time for things that they believe are important. And so it's recognizing that you've got to do some planning well in advance, because think about this. Amazon has 46,000 different book titles on how to start a business and less than 500 book titles on how to exit one. And I think finishing strong is just as important as starting strong. And if you're surrounded by really successful, smart people who can give you the right advice, take action. It's one thing to receive the advice, but for heaven's sakes, do yourself a favor and your family and your legacy and take action. Execute to it. It's a lot of work, but it's well worth it.
And Jayson, when you speak about preparation, you are preaching to the choir, because here at Deep Wealth, with our 9-step roadmap of really how you can prepare before you start your liquidity event and why you'll have a more valuable company and you'll develop the certainty heading into your liquidity event. We're all about that. Let's go to that notion that people will do more to avoid pain than to get pleasure. And so with that in mind, when you don't prepare financially, so when someone doesn't work with a professional like yourself and a business owner, to your point, you know what, guys, I'm just way too busy in my business. Yeah, I know that's important, but I will get to it later. And I know the last time I checked on my calendar, I never saw something called later. There's no day called later in my calendar. No. So Jayson, what would be some of the very real ramifications of not doing the proper planning on the financial side?
Giving far too much money to your silent business partner, which is the IRS, or in Canada, the Canada Revenue Agency. You work so hard to build a business, only to find out that if you haven't taken the right steps in planning, you're going to exit that business one of very few ways. You're either going to get sick, you're going to sell it, you're going to die, or you're going to retire. And so if you don't have a plan to take it away with you favorably, you may find that your family is left in a situation where half or more of everything that you worked for is going to be paid and due to the government. And last time I checked, the government doesn't accept any substitutes for money. And if you're not liquid in that event, the only way to convert equipment, technology, et cetera, the only way to convert that property into money is to liquidate. And people aren't going to pay full price when they know that there's a liquidation event to take care of the government. And so you can avoid that. You can avoid that with proper planning. And it's so important to work with professionals who know what they're doing, such as yourself, such as your organization. What we do at Ascendant Financial and what we do with Better Wealth in the United States with our strategic partners there. It is so important to work with somebody who is thoroughly familiar with the planning that needs to get done and who can keep you on track to actually execute to it and see it through. It's one thing to read about, learn about, discover all these great planning approaches that need to happen. But if you don't take action, you're not only going to jeopardize your future while you're alive, but you're going to unnecessarily erode your wealth when you die. It's completely avoidable. And it's absurd to not take the right planning steps, frankly.
It's really interesting, Jayson. And for our listeners, I hope you caught on to what Jayson said at the start of this. And what he said was too many people focus on the start, but not on the exit. And the smart and successful business person, all of us listening to this podcast, of course, we're smart and successful, right? We need to start with the exit. You plan the exit, whatever that looks like, and then you can enter into the business or the liquidity event or whatever it is that you're doing. And Jayson, let's talk about that. I know in our 9-step roadmap in the Deep Wealth Experience, step number 4 and step number 5 are all about due diligence. And so step 4 is due diligence specifically, and step 5 is a winning mindset. And so if I'm a business owner, I have a successful business, and I know that I'm going to have a liquidity event 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 7 years from now. So I'm smart enough to say it's not tomorrow. Yeah. I'm smart enough to say I'm going to prepare every which way I can to maximize my chance for success. And Jayson, in this example here, let's assume I've done zero planning on the financial side. I haven't done any tax planning. I haven't done any financial planning. I come to you, Jayson. What would be some of the things that I should start thinking about as you're speaking with me and you're taking me under your wing to make it a better day after my exit and even leading up to it? What would be some of the things I should start thinking?
I would lead you through a thought exercise by asking you, if we were sitting down 2 years from now today, what specifically would have had to have happened in order for you to feel like you made significant progress? And that gets the discussion started around, what you're worried about, what's concerning for you, what specific financial objectives do you have? How much capital do we need to achieve them? And what steps are already underway? What steps are missing? It's a whole planning process, but it has to be driven by very specific objectives. Otherwise, we just don't know what we're planning for. I see so often, and you may come across this as well, these hypotheses around, gosh, here's what things can look like for you financially if you take a portion of your wealth and sock it away into mutual funds and stocks and things like that without any certainty of what the outcomes are going to be. And we don't look at the most important asset on the balance sheet of the business, and that's the owner. What are some things that you're doing? Are you properly life insured? We insure the buildings, the equipment, we insure the technology, we insure the business itself. But we look on the balance sheet and we can't find the most important asset, let alone making sure that most important asset is properly insured. So we cover some of the basics, of course, in the financial aspect of it. But we need to get clear on what specific objectives do you have and what do we need to do in order to engineer the outcome, not hope and pray it happens, but how do we engineer it? And that's what we believe. We hold ourselves out there as being the very best at it.
Well, it's interesting, Jayson. There is a commonly held belief out there with business owners, and I know some of our listeners are thinking this right now. Hey, Jason, what you're saying sounds great, but you know what? I have these very expensive accountants and these lawyers, and I even have these other advisors, and obviously they know what they're doing. They're looking after me. Otherwise, why would I have them? And so, for our listeners, why don't you share why sometimes common wisdom is just wrong and that's not the case?
Well, I would sum it up. I would say that if the minority of people in the world are accumulating and controlling the wealth, why do we continue to do what the majority do financially? Who do we actually believe that system is engineered for? Is it really for your better benefit or not? I'll give you one example. Business owners require capital. They want money to expand. They want money to add human resources, technology. They need money for their business. Whenever they need access to capital, they have to go to someone else's bank to get it. And then all the revenue that flows through their business also flows through the books of someone else's bank. Isn't that absurd? And so they're doing all the work inside the business to earn the money, and everyone else is getting all the money. That makes no sense at all. So if you can take control of that banking function as it relates to your needs in the business, then you will not only improve the financial situation, you'll expand the wealth. And so for us, so important that when we take a look at a situation, we want to know how much of that capital is at risk and where does it reside? Because your money must reside somewhere. And so if it resides somewhere where it's exposed to risk of loss, then we want to change that. I haven't met a successful business owner yet who said, no, actually, I prefer to continue to have capital subjected to the risk of loss. And I don't think I'm taxed enough. And we want to minimize tax, maximize wealth, but we don't want to expose money by handing it over to someone else who thinks that they can do better with it than the business owner can. So we teach, we educate, we help business owners to implement the process of becoming your own banker, the infinite banking concept, which is not a product, it's a process. And someone has to perform that function, and it should be the business owner. The business owner should control that.
So, Jason, I know our listeners are going to be thinking, well, wait a minute. I just heard that even though I have accountants and lawyers, they may not be looking out for me the way that I think they am. And now I'm hearing you say, wait a minute, I have to become my own banker in something that you're calling the infinite banking concept. So what does that mean, Jason? To become my own banker, what does that look like? What am I doing?
The essence of it is to recapture the interest, to recapture the money that's flowing away from the business and by proxy flowing away from your family for all the things that you need to finance corporately and personally. And for example, if you think of, business owners who need equipment, I was dealing with a corporate owner just before you and I hopped onto the podcast. He buys heavy duty machinery. And he said, look, we just create a fund inside the business. We build up the money and then we go buy the piece of equipment. So who got all the money? Someone else. And where did you save it before buying the equipment? You saved it in someone else's bank. So you did all the work. You stockpiled the money in someone else's system. You withdrew it, bought the piece of equipment. Someone else got all the money. You got the equipment. Whereas if you implement the process of becoming your own banker, the infinite banking concept, you're able to recapture that money through the use of dividend paying, participating whole life insurance.
It sounds intriguing. So why don't you walk us through why does that make me my own banker where I'm now not depending on the banks and really depending on myself?
That's a great question. So the tool, which is a participating dividend paying whole life contract, it's an insurance contract. It's not an investment. This contract begins to accumulate what's called cash value, and it begins piling up from day one. It also has a death benefit. So heaven forbid, if the business owner passed away, there would be a very large tax-free windfall of money that shows up exactly when it's needed the most. But presuming that the business owner is going to live a long time and that the business is going to continue to need the use of money, as this cash value piles up inside the policy on a daily basis, the corporate owner is able to borrow against that accumulating value on demand and on the corporate owner's terms. So using that same example with that heavy equipment operator, if he had saved up the same amount of capital inside of his own system, not someone else's, he would have been able to borrow against that accumulating value, purchase the equipment. Now he's got that equipment generating more revenue for his business, and he gets to repay the loan that he accessed from the insurance company on his terms, nobody else's. So you're in a position of total and absolute financial control. We know that every human being has a best before date. Would you agree?
We all have a best before date. Yet to meet someone who doesn't.
Right. Nobody has a lease on life. And so we know that death will come. And when that day comes, we get tax-free windfall that shows up exactly when it's needed the most. And so if you live a long time, you'll be a hero to your business and to your family, because now you're not transferring money away from your business and transferring money away from your family. And heaven forbid, if the unthinkable happened and you died prematurely, you'll also be a hero to your business and to your family. And so what's so important to understand is that banking is a process. It's not a product. This dividend paying participating whole life insurance contract is just a tool. And if we put the best tool for the job in the hands of an incompetent, not only will that person not turn out any good work with the tool, they're likely going to break the damn tool. And so that's why you got to work with somebody who's thoroughly familiar with how to implement this process inside of your business and your family. And so working with somebody who actually practices that process themselves is so important, because anybody can sell you life insurance. There are hundreds of thousands of life license advisors who will sell you a life insurance policy. That's just the tool. And it just so happens to be the best tool to get the job of becoming your own banker done. But you need someone who knows how to implement the process to coach you and to mentor you through it. And we're pretty good at it.
And so, Jayson, we'll talk about that. Before we do that, though, I know one of the questions that some of our listeners are going to be thinking is, okay, I'm with you big picture wise on getting life insurance through the business, having that become my own bank that I can finance things within the business. I know, though, business owners are thinking, well, Jayson, again, that sounds really good, but there's always a but. Things are tight with the business. And I'm sure the premium for something like this isn't inexpensive. What would you say to someone who's asking that?
Well, I would say that we would take a look at the business in terms of how money is flowing through it. If I insert myself into a situation with a corporate owner who says, listen, like we're literally flow through. Everything that flows in is flowing out. Then we have another problem to address before we can take control of the banking function. We have to implement the profit first model, get that discipline going in the business to free up capital to implement the process. The money's there. The money is there. Here's the key. The business owner is already allocating every penny to what the business owner has prioritized as being financially important. So if this becomes financially important, the money's there. It already exists. It's a method, and it just takes some consultation and some coaching. And we mentor and lead our clients through that.
So really what I'm hearing is the good old saying, where there is a will, there's a way.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Where there's a will, there's a way, provided that the way is made a priority. Because when you recognize, I want you to think about this, and I would invite all your listeners to just take a moment and think about this with me. Think about all the money that you've spent on anything up to this point in your lifetime. For property, mortgages, boats, recreation vehicles, taxes, property taxes, car insurance, you name it. Could you write me a check for that amount of money right now?
I suspect most people would say, no, not happening.
Not a chance. And the reason is that they did all the work to earn the money to pay for those things. But that money flowed away from their family and away from their business into someone else's bank. I say that again. And if any of your listeners have debt, their debt is someone else's passive income. So why not have that money flowing back to the business and the family by taking control of that financing function as it relates to your needs and accumulate and control that wealth? Why transfer it away if there's a way to keep it in the family? Isn't that good?
Jayson, it sounds great. It's also one of those things, and I'm sure people are thinking this of, hey, Jayson, if it sounds too good to be true, what's the catch? What am I missing here? And because really what it sounds like is all those things in the past that people have purchased, whether it be personal or business or a blend of both, instead of having it as someone else's bank, instead of someone else making the money off of those transactions through the system that you have, that could have been me loaning it to me. Yeah. And then at the very end, it all works itself out and it all comes back to the business.
It sure does. And I would say, because we often get the question too, why isn't everyone doing this? And the answer is those who understand it are. And so it's really important because everything begins with the way that we think. And the truth is, most people would rather die than think. And the very first step in understanding the process, there's a 92-page read, the book that was authored by my late mentor, R. Nelson Nash, God rest his soul. I was blessed beyond the definition of good fortune to be mentored by him for several years. And if you think about just how revolutionary he was, if you get an opportunity to read his book, if you haven't read it yet, it's titled Becoming Your Own Banker. And this book has sold more than 470,000 copies. And there's a reason. It works. The process works. And so I would encourage your listeners to get their hands on a copy of R. Nelson Nash's book. It'll take you less than an afternoon to read through it. He wrote it for you. He didn't write it for the financial sector or the financial professional. He wrote it for you. And so I would wholeheartedly encourage you to read that book with an open mind, and it's going to open your eyes to a whole new financial world. I promise you.
Timing is often everything. And so for the business owner who's thinking, hey, this sounds good, but I'll get to it when I get to it, or I'm going to have my liquidity event and then I'll look at that, we would both agree is too late and you've missed a tremendous opportunity. So if I'm starting with a completely clean slate, how long would it typically take from speaking to someone like yourself, figuring out what my needs are, getting everything set up, and then implementing it?
It will take about 6 weeks from start to finish.
So 6 weeks, we then get this moving forward. And how long, once it's in place, can I begin to actually get the benefit of that?
Immediately. Yeah, we begin making sure that the system is engineered properly so that you can begin implementing the process right away. Because as you and I both know, knowledge can escape you. So if you're not simulating, that's the best way of learning. People may have heard of the cone of learning. If you just listen to someone teaching and that's all you get, you're going to retain very little of what you heard or saw. But if you actually simulate, you're going to retain the maximum. And so getting our client into that simulation mode early as possible really attributes to the highest probability of success with the process. And it's so ridiculously simple. It doesn't need to be sensationalized. If your listeners, and I'm speaking to whomever's listening, I'm talking to you, ask yourself this question: who is the banker in your life today? If it isn't you, you have an opportunity, because someone must perform that function for as long as you're going to need to use some money. It can and it should be you. And I can't emphasize enough, working with somebody who's thoroughly familiar with the implementation of this process is so important. And at Ascendant Financial here in Canada, across the country, we are the very best at it. And with Better Wealth, our strategic partner in the United States, Caleb and his team are the very best at it. In fact, Caleb and I co-authored the book titled The And Asset for Canadians, The And Asset in the United States. Caleb authored himself. And as a favor to your listeners, as a gesture to your listeners, we'd be happy to provide a copy of either at no cost. And so there's an additional incentive, give more to get more.
Wow, it doesn't get any better than that. And for our listeners, we will put this all in the show notes. It'll be point and click, really easy. It'll save you some time. And Jayson, thank you for putting that out there. And so you've laid the foundation big picture wise of why we should be doing this. And
Yes.
You've shared big picture wise how this works. To put you on the spot, if I could, for just a moment, Jayson, are there some stories that you can share with us of, hey, this business owner came along and this is what they were looking to do, and here's what happened, and here is why it was such a good thing? We'd love to hear that.
Oh, goodness, yes. So I'll start with a personal story of my own. And when I bought, again, this is taking me back a bit now. So I lived and worked in the United States for a few years in Tampa, Florida. And then my wife, Rebecca, and I, when we got pregnant with our firstborn and we relocated, we moved back to Canada. At that time, you were still able to get a 40-year amortization on your mortgage. And this was in April of 2008. And I had not yet been introduced to this process of becoming your own banker. I had no knowledge that this process even existed. And so I was focused on the rate. I got a great mortgage rate. I got a great amortization. And then in July of that year, I was introduced to the process and I began to implement it personally. And we got rid of the bank. It took us 7 years, 33 years ahead of schedule. And so now the payments that would have otherwise still been going to someone else's bank and leaving my family permanently. Because remember, when the money leaves, you can't earn interest on it again either. Not only for the rest of your life, but for the rest of every future generation that comes after you. It's a permanent transfer of capital away from you. But now we've reversed the flow. Those payments that were otherwise scheduled to leave the family are now coming back to our own system. And I'll never forget, I called Nelson the day that we got rid of the bank. Nelson, you're not going to believe this. We got rid of the bank. This is so good. He said, don't celebrate too quickly. You need to finish the original loan schedule. You're just going to change the process of who gets the money. Isn't that good?
Interesting. Absolutely.
And so now that flows back to our family. And I'll share a business owner example, a gentleman who owns a very successful vacuum truck business. I didn't realize that these vacuum trucks are like $400,000. They're not inexpensive pieces of equipment. And the maintenance alone, just to change tires, for heaven's sakes, is almost $5,000. And so before he met me and before he began to implement this process, his accountant was saying, hey, listen, you have to have money readily available to replace these vacuum trucks. They got to be replaced about once every 5 to 6 years. And we're going to set aside some capital reserve for you to be able to go and do that. When he met with me and I met with his accountant, we determined that he had a terminal tax obligation. If he was to die today, his terminal tax obligation would be about $1,060,000. So I asked the accountant, where's the money going to come from? He said, well, it'll come out of retained earnings. Well, is that going to bend the company a little bit or could it break it? He said, it's going to bend it. That's for sure. So we allocated $50,000 into a corporate-owned, dividend-paying, participating whole life policy. And when I met with the accountant to close the deal with my client, I asked the accountant, which check do you think your client wants to sign? The $1,050,000 payable to the government or the $50,000 check payable to the insurance company with a $1.8 million tax-free death benefit? And we're going to have enough cash value when he's ready to replace his next vacuum truck. We're going to have more than enough capital to borrow against on his terms to buy the next truck. Is there anything stupid about doing that? And he said, not a chance. So we implemented the process. And I swear to God, this is the honest to goodness truth. So this summer, he purchased the vacuum truck using a policy loan from the life insurance company. And all of the money inside the policy is still growing uninterrupted every single day. And he's able to repay that policy loan on his terms. And so they got the truck, which is earning more revenue. They've got all the money growing in the policy. They have a death benefit that's north of 2.6 million now, tax-free, God forbid if he passed away. And he took the money that he was saving for the truck inside someone else's bank and put it into his own and still achieved the objective of getting the truck. Plus, he has all the other tax-free advantages associated with that. Isn't that good?
It's a terrific story. And, what comes out of that, and for our listeners, is sometimes doing what's right isn't easy. In fact, most times doing what's right isn't easy.
Right.
And I know for most of our listeners, you're probably thinking, wait a minute, I've never heard of this before. This is weird. This is different. Why hasn't my accountant spoken to me about this? Why haven't my lawyers spoken to me about this? Just because the masses don't know about it or they're not doing it doesn't mean that it's a thing to do. And for our listeners, I want you to go back to the beginning when you started your business. Nothing else was around. You found a painful problem.
Yeah.
You were passionate about solving it and you solved it. But I'm sure at the time people were saying, hey, who would want to do a business like that? Are you sure? Are you nuts? Are you crazy? And here you are all these years later, and you have a successful business. And so this is another opportunity that's knocking, and to be open-minded and at the very least look into this. Could this be a game changer for you? And everything that we're hearing of what Jayson is saying is yes. And then Jayson, when you think about what you're saying, and now you put the lens on of a liquidity event, and this is the wheelhouse at Deep Wealth, the money that you're saving, you can put towards other kinds of initiatives in the company that will upgrade your revenues, your profits, your EBITDA, your enterprise value. And now you get a win, 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 win all the way through, because you'll have a more valuable company. You'll get a bigger check for your liquidity event. And it's all because you thought different from a strategy that has worked. It's been proven, maybe not so popular out there, but it just works. And that's really all that counts. And so there's a lot there to digest and certainly a lot to think about. So when you look at your business owners, Jayson, and you look at your clients that you're working with, once they've been through the system, as they look at what they've done with you, what have you changed over the years that's really made a difference that our listeners can take that in, think about it, and figure out, how can I apply that for myself?
Well, I'll say that when you get the bankers out of your life, it creates a very peaceful, stress-free financial existence. And our business owner clients refer to that literally on a daily basis. I'm hearing that from existing clients who say, when I know that I've got ready access capital, opportunities track me down, and I can take advantage of those opportunities on demand. And so the feeling of peace that creates, because if you don't have to deal with commercial banks for anything other than the convenience of debit, and certainly if you need much larger financing arrangements, having this policy or this system of policies is an asset on your balance sheet. And so it only, like you said, it bolsters everything. You strengthen the financial leverage that you have, you strengthen the financial position of the business, you increase its value, all those things. My hope isn't going to depress anybody. And, what's interesting too, is that if you think back, and again, back to the last financial crisis that we experienced, there were so many businesses that couldn't cope because they didn't have the supply source of money to weather that financial storm that happened. This will shield you from those future events. During COVID, most recently, corporate owners saying, look, without having ready access to capital, my business would not exist right now. We wouldn't be talking today. But thanks to your guidance, thanks to your team helping us prepare, nobody expected COVID. But when it happened, our clients have increasing net worth on a daily basis.
And that's huge. And it just goes back that you never know what tomorrow brings. All we have is today. Back in the day before COVID hit, life was great. Things were moving forward. The next day, life changed overnight. And if you don't have access to capital, as we all saw, tragically, so many lives were changed for the worse as businesses closed down and they just couldn't operate. And by preparing today, you're preparing today for what might not be such a great tomorrow, but at least you're prepared and you have the financial wherewithal to get through that.
And, Jeffrey, I agree with everything you just said wholeheartedly. And I would add that, your listeners, they deserve a lifetime of no regret. My belief is that financial control should be in your hands. It shouldn't be in the hands of a bank. It shouldn't be in the hands of the government. It shouldn't be in the hands of some temperamental or risky stock market or real estate cycle or economic cycle. Because no matter what's going on in any of those areas, the process of banking must continue. It must go on. And someone's got to control that function. And when you do, and you begin to experience that, you really begin to feel a sense of peace and a sense of hope and a sense of control. And what successful entrepreneur dislikes being in a position of total control?
You're absolutely right. All of us type A personality, business owners, entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I may get the saying a little bit off, but it reminds me of that saying, he who owns the gold writes the rules, or something along those lines.
That's the golden rule.
So here you're owning the gold and you're writing the rules. And it's just a terrific way to be, and just the peace of mind that would come along with that. And so, Jayson, we can go on and the benefits. We're starting to bump into a little bit of a time limit here, which is a good thing because time has just flown by. But let me ask you this, as we begin to wrap up the episode, one of my favorite questions that I ask every guest on the Sell My Business podcast is this. When you think of the movie Back to the Future, you have that magical DeLorean car. And that DeLorean car, it can go to any point in time. So imagine, Jayson, it's tomorrow morning. You wake up, you look out your window, the DeLorean car is there, the door is open, it's waiting for you to hop in, and you can now go to any point in your life. So Jayson, as a young child, an adolescent, an adult, whatever it would be, what would you tell your younger self in terms of, hey, Jayson, do this or don't do that, or here's some life wisdom or lessons learned? What would that be for you?
I think what I would say to my younger self is listen more than you speak. Listen more than you speak. You have two ears and one mouth for a reason. And so that's the advice I would give myself, because I find that as I continue to grow and I recognize that there's no such thing as having arrived in knowledge. There's always something new to learn. And I do my best learning by listening effectively. And so that's what I would say to my younger self.
That's terrific advice. We spoke of one golden rule. I would put that as another golden rule, that listening more than you talk. And I think there's some terrific wisdom in there. Jayson, as we wrap this up, if our listeners would like to get in touch with you online, what would be the best way to do that?
I would say YouTube. So if you visit our YouTube channel, The Banker's Vault, or our podcast, Wealth Without Bay Street, that's Wealth Without Bay Street. That'd be the Wall Street equivalent in the United States. Either one of those YouTube channels, there's ample opportunity to get in touch. If you visit our website, ascendantfinancial.ca, again, that's ascendantfinancial.ca. Even for our good friends in the United States who are listening, we will make sure that you're put in touch with our strategic partner and that you're all set and provided with the best mentoring and coaching that exists out there as it relates to this process, bar none. And we will, again, as a favor to your listeners, Jeffrey, we will provide a copy of the book, The And Asset. We'll get that digital copy sent right over. So in the show notes, there'll be a link that people can click through to get that, and you'll get it in your inbox in an instant. So take advantage of that. It's great value. And we hope that your listeners got something new out of today, because there's no such thing as having arrived in knowledge.
I love it. And again, for all of our listeners, in the show notes, we'll have all those links there for you. Not to worry, it'll be waiting for you. And mark this day down in your calendar. This is a day where you learned a revolutionary concept that is a game changer, and we'll now toss the ball into your court and have you take what Jayson has shared and see how you can make a difference and apply this to your business and ultimately all of your stakeholders. Jayson, as we wrap up the episode, I want to thank you so much for taking part of your day today and spending it with us on the Sell My Business podcast. And as always, please continue to stay healthy and safe.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be with you.
The Deep Wealth experience was definitely a game changer for me.
This course is one of the best investments you will ever make, because you will get an ROI of 100 times that. Anybody who doesn't go through it will lose millions.
If you don't have time for this program, you'll never have time for a successful liquidity.
I mean, it was the best value of any business course I've ever taken. The money was very well spent.
Compared to when we first began, today I feel better prepared, but in some respects, maybe less prepared, not because of the course, but because the course brought to light so many things that I thought we were on top of that we need to fix.
I 100% believe there's never a great time for a business owner to allocate extra hours into his or her week or day. So it's an investment that will yield results today. I thought I will reap the benefit of this program in 3 to 5 years down the road. But as soon as I stepped forward into the program, my mind changed immediately.
There was so much value in the experience that the time I invested paid back so much for the energy that was expended.
The Deep Wealth experience compared to other programs is the top. What we learned is very practical. Sometimes you learn stuff that is great to learn, but you never use it. The stuff we learned from Deep Wealth experience, I believe is going to benefit us both.
I've done an executive MBA. I've worked for billion-dollar companies before. I've worked for smaller companies before I started my business. I've been running my business successfully now for getting close to a decade. We're on a growth trajectory. Reflecting back on the Deep Wealth, I knew less than 10% what I know now. Maybe close to 1% even.
Hands down, the best program in which I've ever participated. And we've done a lot of different things over the years. We've been in other mastermind groups, gone to many seminars, workshops, conferences, retreats, read books. This was so different. I haven't had an experience that's anything close to this in all the years that we've been at this. It's 5-star, A+.
I would highly recommend it to any super busy business owner out there. And Deep Wealth is an accurate name for it. This program leads to deeper wealth and happier wealth, not just deeper wealth. I don't think there's a dollar value that could be associated with such an experience and knowledge that could be applied today and forever.
Are you leaving millions on the table? Please visit www.deepwealth.com deepwealth.com/success to learn more. If you're not on my email list, you'll want to be. Sign up at www.deepwealth.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode of the Sell My Business podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Reviews help me reach new listeners, grow the show, and continue to create content that you'll enjoy. As we close out this episode, a heartfelt thank you for your time, and as always, please stay healthy and safe.